Thank you everybody for being here. My name is Guilherme and I work at the Open Source Program Office at SAP. And in there, I am one of the co-leads of the internal working group we have for driving the awareness and the adoption of InnerSource in the company. So we are always looking into new ways to introduce this and to help the teams to adopt InnerSource. And that was what led me to this topic, contributor journey optimization. As far as I know, this has not been explored too much yet. After starting working on it and searching for references, I found some interesting references and some interesting prior art, but it's definitely not explored enough. So even the term contributor journey optimization, I think you will not find it yet. If you do find it, it's probably in connection with the work that I am going to present today. So this is very interesting, and the reason I'm here is to present the idea. What I'm going to present is still a concept, still an idea, and the objective here to share it with the community is to collect feedback and also start looking for early adopters. Of course, we at SAP will be an early adopter for this. We'll start adopting soon and trying this out, but we are also looking into presenting this, collecting feedback from the community, and also motivating people to try this out as soon as we have more content about it out there. So the structure of the presentation, I want to start with a little bit of motivation of what InnerSource is and why we should do it. It's going to be very short. I mean, I'm presenting to a community that knows what it is, but I always like my presentations to be a bit self-contained. And also, if anyone stumbles into this presentation, for instance, with the recording, I want to have this there too, in case it's the first contact somebody's having with InnerSource. Then I'm going to talk about the problem statement. I mean, what is the idea of contributor journey optimization trying to solve? And then what is contributor journey optimization and how it addresses this problem that we're trying to solve. And finally, I'm going to talk about what are the next steps that I am planning. How do I see the future of this concept, this idea? So let's start it. What is InnerSource? I always start with my favorite definition of what InnerSource is. So InnerSource is the use of open source software development practices and the establishment of an open source-like culture within organizations. I like this definition very much. It touches like the culture of open source, and it's very appealing to me because I have an open source background. But this definition sometimes may not be appealing for people that do not have an open source background, and also it doesn't say a lot about the value that it brings. So I try to think about a different definition that would maybe express that and consider this also an experiment. I don't think that we will replace the definition, but it's only a thought exercise so that we can try this out. So I define it in our source here as the practice of optimizing resources is in an organization through open source style internal collaboration and empowerment. And why I did this shift, I wanted to have in the definition an idea of the value it brings. And I think that even though in our source, we could sell it with different values, like for instance, I could sell it from the angle of I want my developers to be more satisfied with their work. At the end, I thought that going through the angle of optimizing resources was interesting because I think that this is a very appealing value that InnerSource brings, in the terms that if you allow the internal users of your processes, your software, or whatever you have for internal users that you produce, if you allow them to participate in the process, if you empower them to contribute, then you will be optimizing the resources and you will have more output at the end. And so you'll have a better outcome. So that's a definition that I think encompasses why we do InnerSource too. Yeah, so maybe think about it, take it as a food for thought. To make it a little bit more tangible, as we are going to introduce something about the journey of a contributor or a potential contributor, I thought about putting a bit more meat to the bone here. Usually when I present InnerSource, I present it like this. That is, going from the image I represent here on the left to the image that I represent on the right. So on the left, we have somebody that has a relationship of usage with software, or content. I like to keep InnerSource more general than software. But it's only a relationship of use, and the software content is very opaque. You don't see the project behind it, and then it leaves a lot of questions unanswered, like who is maintaining it, who else is using it, can I talk to those people, how can I report bugs, how can I request features, and where's the documentation, where's the source code, where's the material behind it so that I can learn more. And on the other hand, or on the other side, on the right, then I represent here the image of what I consider maybe the ideal InnerSource project. And here I want to contrast the project versus software content, because you see the project and the people beyond or behind the software and the content. And here is a relationship where the user, it's not just a user or just a stakeholder, but it's also a community member, it's also a contributor. They see the project, they see the documentation, not only for users, but also for developers and project members. They have clear feedback channels. They have clear community and discussion forums. They have a forum for asking questions. They have access to the roadmap. They have access to the backlog. They see what is planned. They see what bugs were already reported. They see the source code so that they can learn, they can discuss, they can influence, and of course, they can contribute. And as you can imagine, this is not either or. Most projects that you will encounter, unless they start adopting InnerSource from the beginning and very committed to that, they will be in a spectrum. They will be somewhere into going from what you see on the left to what I represented on the right. Now, what is the problem that we are trying to solve with contributor journey optimization? So the starting point here is that we should have project teams that are already interested in adopting InnerSource. So this is not a method or a technique that I am developing to convince teams to do InnerSource, but rather something that is, okay, they understood InnerSource, they understood the value of InnerSource, and they want to do it. So how do they do it? And then that's the problem. How can a project team apply InnerSource practices to their project? And how can we, for instance, members of an ISPO who are tasked with helping the projects, how can we help them in applying InnerSource practices to their own projects? And what do we already have to help us with that today? So in public, for instance, we do have InnerSource Commons, which has great content. We have the learning path, we have books like managing InnerSource projects, we have the patterns book, we have recordings from these events like community calls, and we have the community support. If we go into the Slack and we ask questions, we can get other members of the community to help us. But that's very good, but it's not structured, usually not structured for adoption by project maintainers. I mean, even the book Managing InnerSource Projects, it's a great book, but a lot of the content there is more for an InnerSource program office than a project. It's more prescriptive to how ISPOs can support the adoption of InnerSource. Then what do we have at SAP today? So we have an internal knowledge base, and this includes, it's not only that, but includes a template repository. It includes a guide and a checklist for project maintainers, and it also has some tooling. We have an InnerSource linter that helps the projects to adopt these best practices in automated fashion. And we also have consulting from experts, like from our InnerSource program office. If people want help adopting InnerSource, they can come to us. But then, this still leaves some challenges. Like, for instance, the teams, they have difficulties prioritizing InnerSource adoption. As you can imagine, InnerSource is one of many topics, and the project teams, they have to decide how to use their capacity. So InnerSource adoption is in competition with many other initiatives, with compliance related tasks, with functional related tasks. So the adoption may still be a bit overwhelming. If you remember the picture that I showed in the beginning, depending on where they start with the adoption, where they are in their current maturity level, there's a lot for them to do. So how do they decide what to do? So we should give them, or I came to the conclusion that we should give them a more structured method for incrementally adopting InnerSource. And that leads us to this idea of contributor journey optimization. So we'll start with a definition. And this definition says that contributor journey optimization is a strategic approach focused on enhancing the experience and effectiveness of individuals who contribute to a project, organization, or community. So this is pretty broad. It goes beyond just a project. This concept is particularly relevant in environments like open source projects, collaborative platforms, volunteer organizations, and any setting that relies on contributions from various participants. Now, there is an interesting story on how this definition came to be, let's say. And I want to tell you a little bit of that story. So I was in an event that was hosted by SAP. It was a public event. If I'm not mistaken, it was Pology Live event co-organized with the To-Do group. And I saw a few slides that represented either growth curves or ladders with steps, either representing value that comes out of different stages in a maturity model or different stages in participation of contributors in a project. And with that, I started thinking, okay, it would be interesting to represent the journey a user can have with respect to a project with this ladder style where you have stages. So that goes from not knowing a project at all to knowing the project and going until maybe becoming a maintainer. And thinking about the steps that they take from one stage to another and then optimizing those steps. And as you can see, this description is way broader than that. And that's because when I thought about this idea, I gave it a name, and I gave it the name contributor journey optimization. But then I started looking for already existing usages of that term, and I couldn't find it. So I thought, okay, the term is not used. But hey, what a lot of people are doing now is using large language models instead of searches. And so what would happen if I asked one what contributor journey optimization is? And yes, that's how this definition came to be. Like it came from ChatGPT, and I asked it, what is contributor journey optimization? And it spat out this description. And I thought, okay, this is a very, very good definition. So I'm going to use this, but this is broader than what I am working on. So I still like this name. I'm still going to use this name, at least for now, but what I am actually working on and what I'm going to present. So the idea is a model and a method for contributor journey optimization with prescriptive incremental actions for continuous adoption of inner source focused on resource-constrained teams and projects. So it's a subset of that description that I showed before, but I'm still going to use the name, at least for now, because I don't have a better name that represents only this model and this subset. So it's a work in progress. And I'm highlighting inner source here because a common question is, well, contributor journey optimization, obviously, if I think of the term, it makes sense for open source projects too, right? But the method I am working on is focusing on inner source because there are different challenges in applying it to open source or inner source projects, and I wanted to focus it on inner source first. So one could think of adapting this to open source projects, but I don't want to be limited in the sense that I have to make it general. I want to be able to make it focused on inner source. All right. A comment before we move forward when I present the actual model is I like this quote here that says all models are wrong because we are always simplifying things with models, but some are useful. And I am very aware that I made some assumptions that are probably wrong, but purposely wrong in the terms of simplifying the model because it has to be simple. I am thinking that it should be something that can be easily understood and applied by teams who are finding it difficult to prioritize adoption of inner source. So what is this model? First, for the contributor journey. As I mentioned, I am modeling this in steps in a ladder, or rather stages in which a user who is a potential contributor could be in a relationship to a project. Like for instance, if I think about it, first, the user is at the stage where it doesn't know, or the potential user is at the stage that they don't know what the project is and what it offers. Then they learn about the project, so they know what the project offers now. Then with that, they have to decide if they use the project. So they go from this stage to using or reusing what the project offers. then when they are using, they can become participants on the project. What I mean by participants here, I'm thinking about joining forums, asking questions in forums, reporting bugs, reporting new feature requests, helping other users with their knowledge. So this is what I mean by participating in the project. From here, they could contribute to the project. So of course, you may think of participation as contribution. And again, I am taking simplifications here. So I am defining as contributing as like they are really contributing code or content directly to the project. And they do that once, but you may want them to go further. And of course, you want them to contribute regularly to the project. And depending on the governance of the project, they may even become a trusted committer or become a maintainer. And then comes the optimization here, where we think, before that, I established here again as a simplification that as of a certain step here, or as of a certain stage where you are in the journey, you start giving value back to the project. And again, you could be giving back just by knowing what the project offers and maybe telling other people that you know what it does. So that was a form of getting value. But I define it here for simplicity that when you start participating on the project, you actually start giving value back to the project. And as project maintainers, we want to see more value coming from our users back into the project. And that's another reason to think about this in this way of this journey. So the optimization comes into thinking about the steps to go from one stage to the other. And what do you have to do in your project to make it as easy as possible that a person that is in one of the stages can go to the next and so on. And of course, not everybody is going to become a maintainer. Most people will not even become a contributor. But my idea behind this here is that you will at the end optimize not only how you become a contributor, but you will optimize the journey for each stakeholder of your project to get where they need to be, basically, and as easily as possible in this journey. Now, as I mentioned, if we look at all the steps and all that can be done here, it's probably overwhelming. So the idea is to tell the project teams, hey, look at your project, see where you think you have most people now, and where do you want to focus? And which of these transitions do you want to focus? So choose one or two of them, and then let's look into that transition a little more deeply. For instance, if we focus on this transition from does not know the project to knows the project. So you may ask questions in your team, you may ask these questions. Can the content be easily found in an internal search tools and catalogs? Like, what are the potential entry points of the content? Do I have like videos somewhere, but they don't have a link to my project, something like that? And can the content documentation be easily reached from all these different project entry points? Like, for instance, I often stumble into the backlog of projects, but I cannot understand it, and there in the backlog, there's no description saying, hey, this is my project, learn more of my project here. So this is what I mean here. And we do have related patterns that we can match to each of these transitions. And some of these patterns, they are more useful for the ISPO in supporting the adoption of InnerSource and supporting this particular step, like for instance, creating an internal InnerSource portal. And some other patterns are more related to the direct adoption by the project team, like for instance, standard-based documentation. So if they should have like this README, contribution guidelines, support.md, to this kind of stuff. And then these are the kind of potential tasks that can come out of analyzing this particular step of a project. Internal search engine optimization, discover how you can make sure that if people search for your project in your internal search, they will find it. Adding project to any existing catalog. Maybe you have an internal reuse catalog, you have an internal InnerSource portal, or you have to think what makes sense for your company. And awareness on sessions on events and selected forums where the topic of your project makes sense. So these are just some of the tasks that we can prescribe, and we can in our companies also tell the people, okay, this is how the best way to do these steps or these tasks in our company. Another step, again, as an example, could be how do we move people in our project from participant to contributor? And then questions that we can ask again is, do our projects have, or does our project have clear invite to contribute? Does it have contribution guidelines? Does it have a clear vision so that the people will know what contributions make sense or do not make sense without having to ask the project team? Does it have a good and easy way to reach the development documentation? So facilitating like all these things, how easy it is to do this transition. And again, related patterns here. For the ISPO, we can have a geek marketplace where the people can list the contributions that where they would want to have help from outside of the team. There we also have, again, the standard-based documentation. We have the pattern like praise participants, so that if somebody's helping in the community, you can praise them with some kind of award or participant of the month, or something like that. You can have dedicated community leaders that try to help these community participants to go from one stage to the other. And we even may have missing patterns in InnerSource Commons. So while we do this exercise of refining this idea, this could create a backlog for us. For instance, I think here, good first issues and help wanted is something that could help, and we do not have a pattern for that. So that's something that we might work on as a collective. And potential tasks here for the project team, again, define contribution guidelines, define a vision for the project, create, refine, or publish developer documentation if it's not there yet, offer maybe a consulting hour or something like that that can help people interested in contributing to get the help they need. Just as examples, this is something that the project team has to decide what makes sense for the project for this particular step. As an example on how this can be tweaked for organizations, because the idea is from InnerSource Commons, we will provide something that is general, but the companies, they know what makes sense mostly inside of their companies to do this transition. So that's where the ISPO has to help to provide this kind of content and tweak this to their own organization. So if we look at this transition, specifically for SAP, for do not know the project, who knows what the project offers, we can help our project teams by guiding them and telling them how to create featured links in our corporate search. So this would be the equivalent if you use if you use a commercial public search today. You see that when you search a term, usually there are ads that tell you, hey, why don't you try to use this product? So this would be the equivalent of putting ads for specific projects, given some terms in our internal search to make it them easier to find, or give talks in an engineering ecosystem session, which is an internal series of sessions that we have. So just this is just to convey the idea that we do have, as people working on InnerSource program offices, we do have to take this idea and tweak it for our own needs so that we can help our internal projects. Now, the whole idea here, so putting this into a more descriptive way, I would like to develop here a time-boxed workshop, and this could be either facilitated by somebody who has knowledge about InnerSource, or it could be something that a team tries to do by their own. So I'm still thinking about that, if that would be possible, because this is also to minimize the ISPO becoming a bottleneck in the beginning. And the idea here is with the core project members, and we could also invite community and contributors if you already have some of them, depending on your project maturity. Then we evaluate the state of the project with respect to that journey. So we think how many people, where do we have most people on those stages of the journey? And then we decide on 2 or 3 focus journey steps, meaning where we want to focus on transitioning from one stage to the other. Then you do a deep dive for each of these transitions. And based on those questions that they should ask themselves, based on the patterns that we prescribe for that particular transition, and also the content that you create for your own organization on how to facilitate that transition, they will decide and define tasks for their project that are InnerSource adoption related tasks, and they will put that in their backlog. So meaning that they will look into those tasks every time that they are doing planning to decide, hey, can we work on these tasks now? And ideally, if they can do that, they should also reserve capacity on each sprint for those particular tasks if they are really wanting to prioritize this InnerSource adoption. Then, of course, you focused on some steps of the journey, so you want to continue. You want to do this incrementally, so you should repeat this exercise either as a full workshop or something lighter every now and then, ideally with a specific period, like every month or every 2 months, or of course, it depends on the interest and capacity of the team, until they decide they are now good enough or they are satisfied with their own maturity with respect of InnerSource and how much they already optimized the journey. I'm also thinking about giving something that or creating a guide like this that is for individuals, because sometimes you know, depending on companies or teams, there is one particular person that is more interested than the rest, and they want to start trying that as an experiment, and that could give a guide to a single person to try to decide where to start adopting InnerSource. But the focus here for me would be to work first on this time boxed workshop. Right? So what are the next steps here? I'd say for us in InnerSource Commons here, and this is something I am working on, so it's our contribution from SAP, is to create a pattern for contributor journey optimization. There is already a draft for that, but we have to really, that was mainly generated by another peer that took the idea and generated it based on AI and large language models. So we need to revise it and to adapt so that it's actually usable. Then after this pattern is created, we also want to create templates like in Mural or Miro, which are, let's say, whiteboard applications so that people can use for this workshop or a self-service format. Then we want to gather pilots and feedbacks from the community on this, identify the gaps, and maybe find a more suitable name, because as I mentioned before, the contributor journey optimization as a topic is quite broad, and the idea that I am working on is a subset of that. So if I don't get a better name, I'll probably use that as a synonym, but let's see. And for SAP, as I mentioned, we should adapt the concept to our organization. As I am working on it, I am already thinking about what we can do specifically for SAP for each of these transitions. Then we want to pilot this workshop concept with a few projects. And then if this works well, so that ISPO is not a bottleneck for doing these workshops, we also want to gather and train experts to scale the workshop format. So this is the idea of how to move forward. Of course, this is open for collaboration and contribution. If you are interested in learning more about this and contributing, giving your feedback, we do have an issue in the ISPO working group of InnerSource Commons, and the link is here. And I also have this represented as a whiteboard in Miro, where we usually create the rules for InnerSource Commons. You can also help finding references and prior art that I can incorporate in the concept. And if you are interested in testing this out, you can be a very early test pilot. Now, before we close, I mentioned before that I saw some slides in our event. This is the slide I could trace back. So to the best of my memory, this was the slide that I saw that in their event that sparked the idea. I could trace it to the event, but I could not trace it to the specific presentation. So I'm still trying to find that out to have a better reference. With that, thank you very much. This is the whole idea. And now I would like to welcome your feedback and also answer your questions if you have any.